Welcome to IT in Motion, where we make autonomous IT entertaining and informative. My name is Sun.
And I'm Josh. We're your hosts. Today we're talking to Clinton White, Client Director at AppCentrix's. Everybody give it up for Clinton White.
Welcome to the show, Clinton.
Welcome. They all came out for you today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
We're glad to have you. Can you tell us briefly a little bit about yourself?
Client Director AppCentrix's, been in the IT world for, just on 25 years now. I'm based in Cape Town, in the Western Cape, South Africa. And it's good to be on the show. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. And when we were talking before, you'd mentioned that you're a surfer. You didn't rank your skill level as extremely high when we were talking, but we've got a little game here.
Okay.
What we're going to do is we're going to throw out some surfing terms, and you're going to give us your definition. So, Sun, you want to kick us off?
Sure. We'll start with aerial. And
Aerial.
Don't say mermaid.
So can I get graphical? I can show you.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Aerial, yeah, when you're carving up and you're coming up at the top of the wave and you come down.
Absolutely. You catch some air. I count that as a point.
Correct answer. All right. Next definition is bogging.
Bogging. No, bogging I don't know.
So that's when you shift your weight too far back and it lifts up the nose of the surfboard.
Okay, I thought there was actually a term called bitchin'. All right.
That's what they call it when you do a sweet aerial.
All right, got me.
Nice. All right. How about bailing?
Bailing. Bailing is just an elegant dismount off the board.
That's right.
Elegant? Yeah, sure.
An elegant.
But that is
That's
correct.
what it
Yes.
All right. Next one is turtle roll.
Turtle roll. Gee, these are the moves that the shortboard guys do. I'm a longboarder.
You're a longboarder.
So turtle roll, I think is a double on a crest, or it's inside a crest and you come over underneath and out again.
So it says it's a surfing technique where the surfer flips the board over in front of an oncoming wave to get under it.
That's it. Okay, cool. So I'll give myself half a point.
Half a point. I like it. So can we just do both sounds, Son? Is that possible?
Yes.
Yeah. Half to you. There we go. Half to you, half to me.
Perfect. And then this should be an easy one. What's a barrel?
What's that?
A barrel.
A barrel is when you're inside the wave and the wave closes over you, but you still can see right through, so you pop out as soon as you're in the clear. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. What is a mush burger?
Nah, got me there.
Well, he intentionally did that to stump you. I think he just liked the term.
It just sounds funny. It's a slow and fat wave. It just sounds like very much just like Southern California in one word to me. I don't know.
Yeah, like nonsense. But yes, absolutely. How about
I should know that because those are the waves I catch all the time. So, okay, cool. Got one there. Thank you. Yeah.
doggy door?
Doggy door.
It's what you have to go through when you're in trouble at home.
Got me.
A small exit hole a surfer finds to get out of the barrel.
Okay.
It's like a small little...
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we're using different terminologies across the hemispheres here. But don't worry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Probably so.
Is that the Hawaiian surf guide you're referring to?
There are a lot of Hawaiian terms in here, so it very well could be.
It could be. We'll give you an easy one. Wipeout.
Oh, cool. Okay, wipe out. Here we go. I do that daily. Wipe out. No problem. That's an unelegant dismount. Okay,
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
All right. So that was fun. You've talked about some of your hobbies with us, right? As we're getting to know each other. you know, you've surfed and you've traveled, you hike, you climb mountains, you do a lot of interesting stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about your background.
As I mentioned, been in IT for just on 25 years. I started off as a programmer,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my entry into the IT field. I programmed for about 3 to 4 years, and then eventually just enjoyed being client facing.
Right.
Ended up doing a lot of demos, a lot of presentations, et cetera, et cetera. And at that stage, I was working for SAS Institute, and kind of joined the pre-sales sales team in that role, doing some training, doing some demos, doing presentations, and then slowly led down the path of sales, and have been in business development and sales for most of my career. The last 15 years, I've been really focusing on managed service and outsourced contracts.
Right.
So looking after and managing large outsourced footprints within specific market verticals, financials, and insurance in particular. And when I looked at AIOps as it became quite interesting in the market, personally, I thought, that's really where services are going to. And hence I joined the AppCentrix's team in my current role to both develop account base, as well as develop go-to-market solutions, from a marketing and a deployment perspective. So kind of where I've branched out to. And it's certainly been quite exciting in the last couple of months, with what we're seeing in the marketplace. So
a lot of,
I think it's a good place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of AI stuff kind of in the zeitgeist right now. You're someone who's been interested in AIOps for longer than most. What is the real thing someone should be focusing in on when they're thinking about AIOps?
Sure, it's a question we get. It's a question we get often. Because the dilemma is a lot of the clients have got stuff on the go. They've got a lot of projects. They've got other issues that they're dealing with. And what we're finding in the local market is that the theme of AIOps is new.
Right.
It's a market that's still somewhat in its infancy. And clients are grappling where to start. What's my entry point? But it is very much a decision based on what you want to get out of it, where your burning issues are right now from a business or an IT operations perspective. And that's what you got to focus on. If it's inefficiencies in IT operations, if it's poor data that you're managing or trying to manage, if it's assets that you're dealing with that you don't have visibility of in your estate, those are the things you need to focus on, and then build out from there in terms of what your roadmap's going to be and what your journey is going to be, because it is a journey. There's no quick fix. There's no just flick the switch and AIOps works.
Right.
But the common themes seem to be around, we don't know what's happening in our estate. How do we gain visibility? We've got silos. How do we look over the fence to see what's happening left or right of us? And we find that as a common place to start. Let's find out what you have in your estate. Let's get your data accurate, get your CMDB and your asset registry accurate, define everything you need to define, then align those to services, business services, et cetera,
right?
And we build out the journey.
So it's a lot of preparation work before you even get to the actualized, result that you're hoping to achieve, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on, and you hit the nail on the head. Some clients, it's 1.5 years, 2 years, depending on the size and scale of preparation before we actually start, really rolling out anything meaningful, to be honest.
So really, it comes down to that understanding the business need, right? What are the actual problems and how do we solve them, right? Which is sort of a common theme probably throughout your career in all sorts of sectors.
Yeah. It's different in different industries too, right? I mean, like retail industry might have different issues than, service providers might, versus, federal people in the public sector, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how does AI ops lead to efficiency? We talked a little bit about the journey. What is how does it really get people there? I mean, it takes time, right? So tell us about that.
So, I mean, if you really want to bring it down to retail, right?
Yeah.
So the retailers really want to focus on a couple of key things. It's a hell of a competitive market. We know that. So what do they want to do? And the context I give you is perhaps just from a South African perspective, but price is obviously super important in anyone's eyes when you want to attract your client base. You obviously want to focus on basket share. So in terms of what are your customers buying? What are they coming to your shops for?
Right.
But are they loyal? Are they loyal customers? Is there a bit of brand loyalty that you can build into perhaps loyalty programs or just brand awareness? So certain products are associated with certain brands within the retail space. And I think what we're seeing is the harvesting of all of that information through your normal point of sale, collection right through to what information we do have access to, how we can profile clients or categories within the base of the retail segment, and then analyze that data, create customer-specific campaigns, targeted campaigns, whether it be based on buying patterns or products or pricing specials. There's so many different variables. But to pull that all together through AIOps, I think, is where we're seeing the benefit, because it's just such an enormous amount of data that we have to go through and crunch and analyze, and then visualize at the end of the day, in terms of how do we make it the most effective. Right now, just to give you an example, what's becoming quite a trend in the retail space is online shopping.
Right.
So
Sure.
Guys really don't want to go to the shops. It's easier for me just to go through the catalog as I would be walking through the store, pick some items, and they ship it out. I mean, we've got a couple of retail outlets which guarantee delivery in 60 minutes. If it's not there in 60 minutes, you don't pay for the delivery fee, as an example.
Sure.
That's becoming quite competitive within the retail space, because they all seem to be driving to, these are the items you want, we will get them to your front door as quickly as possible.
It's funny because the world that we're living in is time to value in so many different ways, and that's just one of the examples, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's just front end facing, if I may term it that way. The benefits on the back end from a retail perspective is all around inventory management, logistics, product management, and you can really carry on for quite some time. I mean, that's a complete separate discussion for another day, perhaps. But
right,
you could carry on forever there.
So how does AIOps kind of drive efficiency in that sort of environment?
Personal recommendations. So you become, through the data that a retailer has collected on you. They get to know you perhaps through your loyalty card or through buying patterns or your online profile. They can start analyzing, through customer data, what your purchase history has looked like in the past. What's your browsing behavior as I go through, content, in my basket and fill things up over a 6-month period. They kind of can get a trend, of what you like, and navigate through, understanding your preferences and patterns. And they can obviously come up with suggestions. We've got some some promotions coming up. These are preferential price points for our products. Would you be interested in this? I think through that, maybe that's one example. Another thing we're seeing, because it's such a competitive market, is pricing optimization. So, a loaf of bread or a carton of milk, is what people want to buy as a standard, product. Eggs, whatever it may be, and through awareness of what's happening in the market, retailers can quite quickly adjust pricing on the day, on the hour, just depending on demand. I think that's possibly something else. Customer service, absolutely key. I mean, we all know, we've just said it, we want instant gratification.
Yeah.
And if there's a problem, we want to be able to talk to someone that can help us, whether it be a problem in store or a problem online. Customer service is becoming increasingly key in any of our engagements. We had a retailer just the other day where a shopper took a photo of a rat sitting on some of the fresh produce. And the manner in which the retailer handled that online, through media, through social media, et cetera, was absolutely key. And they handled it very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that's as a result of AIOps, but I think just the awareness of that being out there and being able to address it quickly was very cool.
Those are some good examples of like customer facing experience stuff that AIOps kind of impacts directly, right? So
I mean, sorry to interrupt, but I think one of the biggest ones, and we haven't really given it much thought in this conversation, is fraud and security.
Sure.
I mean, there's a massive benefit just in there, just through the analytics that you can pick up, the training that you pick up, and the anomalies that you can pick up as well.
Right.
Fraud detection is right up there. So, yeah.
Yeah, security is a big. That's a big thing that we focus on, especially these days with automation on the rise. It's, really important.
Yeah, there's a lot of these sort of customer impacting things that you talked about them, right? Where customer service can be AIOps can be applied to that, right? As people are looking through things and kind of looking back in the value chain. What about the other side of it? What about the supply chain side? Are there areas that AIOps is kind of being applied or could be applied into the supply chain to help businesses succeed?
So I think certainly from a supply and demand perspective, most of the retailers don't want to sit with excess stock,
right?
Especially if you're looking at fresh produce, fast-moving goods. So in order to match what's happening on the front end of your business, you obviously need to ensure that you've got enough on the back end of your business.
Right.
Yeah.
The trick is you don't want too much. Otherwise, you sit with stock on hand. Stock could perish. You've got all sorts of overheads that you don't want to carry. You've got warehousing, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the crux of it is, how do you manage that through buying patterns? Do you match that to the front end specials and market demand that you're going to create? Ensure that you've got enough on the back end to fulfill that. Otherwise, again, you've got reputational concerns that you need to address.
Yeah.
Shoppers are looking for specials and you're standing in front of the shelves and it's all sold out. You're going, well, that doesn't help me much.
Right.
So it is a balance, but I definitely think through breaking down the silos across all of the customer-facing and back-end operations is absolutely key in getting a clear understanding of that complete line of demand right throughout the retail organization.
Yeah.
So I'm answering this at a very high level, but I think, just to give you the gist of the importance of it is absolutely key in understanding all of those data points across the organization. Retailers are extremely sensitive to price, and because the market is so competitive. And I think any price point that they can gain advantage of is absolutely key. Mm-hmm. So to have the data is one thing. To understand the data and analyze the data That's where AIOps comes in, because there's just so much to consume. Humanly, it's impossible to do.
Right,
And
so
I think the trick is, once you've got that ML in place and you've got your parameters and your algorithms in place, that's when you really hit the sweet spot. And that's utopia. That's where everyone wants to get to.
And that's kind of replacing forecasting teams a lot of times too, right? Is they see trends, previous trends at certain times of the year.
Absolutely.
They also pick up on current events, perhaps that are introducing anomalies, right? And putting that as a factor into how much they should stock and how they should handle different types of customer-facing engagements if issues occur in that. It's really interesting. I actually had a quick question about clothing retail specifically. Typically when there's overstock, they always end up having to resell it to, I don't know, a Marshalls or TJ Maxx, one of those stores that have a collection of different brands.
Yep.
What's the new strategy with overstock for online stores?
So that's a very good question. And essentially what does happen is those items get dumped at a super discounted rate. Right. To be honest,
tell me where to shop. That's what I want to know.
And I say that it's mainstream, but there are other avenues. So yeah, sure, there are outlets, there are people, there are organizations, enterprises that do buy in bulk, and they take that excess stock and they do get it out into the marketplace through other channels. But invariably, at the end of the season, you're sitting with so much stock.
Exactly.
You are going to dump it, and you're just going to try and recover as much cost as what you can.
Right.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, it is some of those things.
I was curious about the stocking strategy for some of these stores in general. Sometimes they have partnerships with manufacturers, perhaps, and they don't hold all the stock in their departments, but as orders come in, they request for more. Right? Is that the new strategy, or do they always stock up? I mean, how do they manage that?
So I think in SA it's somewhat of a different scenario here. We used to have quite a rich textile industry. We would supply demand, we would manufacture based on demand. But our industry in that space has kind of fallen away. So most of the garments brought in now are ready-made from overseas.
Sure.
So it's a different dynamic. Big consignments are coming in. Very little is made locally. And that again is just based on demand.
Right.
We'll keep it in the warehouse. It'll be an item that will hopefully stay in season with us, for this year. Maybe we do decide to keep some of the items because it was quite hot, but the season, hot as in terms of was a good, great product, and a great seller, not hot, but and then we keep it over for the next season because the demand was still high when the season closed out.
Sure.
But that again is going to be based on historical patterns that are coming through and all that information that you have on hand.
All right. Well, hey, we like to focus on listener value, and I'm telling you, one of the listener values, I think people want to know, where does this overstock stuff on super discount go? Tell us the secrets, Clinton. And don't say overstock.com because we're already aware of some of those sites. But
I mean, I can't talk for the overseas market, but I mean, if I look at some of the main online shopping outlets here in SA. They are pretty. I mean, they're damn good at what they do. So they partner. When we talk about the retail ecosystem, for instance, there's one retailer that has its own distribution arm. So they have massive warehousing capacity. That's the one thing. So they can keep stock. It's not a problem.
Right.
But when you order an item, it's usually here within a day. It's usually it's an exception if it's 2 days. And then if you don't like the item or it doesn't fit, within a day the item's collected and you've got your refund. Now that is a great client experience.
Strategy, yeah.
But to answer your question around stock, they often have specials where they are clearing out certain items of stock, and I mean those specials are they're crazy. They are great specials, So it's just one way of recovering costs.
Yeah,
right.
And I'm not saying it's a cookie cut model that applies to all the retailers, but that is just one specific online outlet that seems to be working hell of a well. And looking at their results, it stands. They're doing great in the market.
Yeah.
So it is seasonal. I think it is also dependent on your buying patterns, and it also depends on stock availability.
Yeah.
The dynamics of our market are changing quite a bit in terms of buying patterns. So we're finding our middle class is under a lot of pressure because of the economics specific to SA. Right. I think the retailers, as part of this discussion that we're having, are also grappling with how do we adjust our onboarding of products to meet a very quickly changing consumer market.
Right.
Because people, quite honestly, are cash strapped here, and buying patterns are changing significantly. That will have a problem with current stock holding. And what do you do with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a pretty common situation across a lot of countries. As you're seeing inflation is high globally. There've been all these recoveries of supply chain disruptions, but there's still some disruption in place. Interest rates are changing to try to fight inflation. There's demographic shifts. A lot of that's kind of impacting a lot of people, and so it's this sort of thing where this sort of business intelligence can help figure out what pain points in the market can be addressed, right? Are there any sort of keys to tooling to help figure that stuff out?
So tooling's an interesting one, because again it's a market that's like muddy. There's a lot of activity when it comes to tooling. We know this, but if you look at, I think if you look at the process that you need to go through from an AIOps perspective, tooling, you've got to start off with discovery.
Right.
What is there? Let's go and find out what's in my estate. So there's discovery. Then there's, I think, a phase of collection and monitoring. That to me would be the first logical step.
The baseline. Yeah.
Right.
But exactly. Baseline. Let's see what we've got. Let's discover. Let's find out what we don't know. Let's bring that into a level of observability. I hate that word. Everyone's using it, but it's relevant.
That's right.
It's the buzzword of the of the year.
Shout outs to Zebrium.
Exactly, that's one. There's a few other choice ones, but let's get eyes on those things that we can't see. Then we come to, I think there's a mix of visualization and analytics that comes into it. So we've got an idea of what's there. We need to now we need to understand that 360-degree view all around. We need to break down the silos that we typically have had within our estate. Then there's a level of automation and possible orchestration. Automation is where we start automating routine tasks.
Right.
We start really realizing the value of AIOps, freeing up resources to do the things that they should be doing, not focusing on operations per se, or event or incident management. There's certainly then a level of collaboration and communication, and I mean that in the broader sense, where we're starting to really understand the interdependencies across the estate. We're aligning IT, traditional IT services to business services, so that we talk to different stakeholders within the organization, so that when a service is impacted, a business owner will understand, as a silly example, a storage array has gone down, that will affect my POS system,
Right.
So we can start drawing the lines between a business service and an IT service and really understanding the impact across the entire IT estate. I think then only once we've got that all figured out, I think then we add that layer of machine learning and
An
AIOps
anomaly.
onto it.
Yeah.
That's what we call the sexy stuff.
Right.
when we can really start bringing out the value of true AIOps, where we've got clean data, we've got a clear understanding of our entire estate, we've got everything well published, well categorized, and we can then start moving to a truly efficient environment by introducing the algorithms and all the machine learning concepts, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So definitely a phase that you need to go through. And as I said earlier, it's a journey. It's a whole discovery that you're going to embark on. But those, to me, in my mind, are kind of the logical steps that you go through.
Yeah, we have some what we call a realization plan. Shout out to Brian tomorrow. So it's kind of a roadmap through that. It's that crawl, walk, run. And you do need to get really good at being reactive, meaning like getting good at root cause analysis and drilling down and bringing context all the way up to the business services level before you get to proactive. Right.
Yeah.
So the proactive is when that's the sexy that you had kind of referred to, which is the anomaly detection, identifying bad anomalies, and then, hopefully remediating it before it becomes an outage of sorts.
Yep. Absolutely. That's when you become predictive. That's absolutely, that's utopia. You want to hit that event, that incident before it's even happened.
How important is customizable tooling as it relates to this journey?
Yeah, I think, it's potentially, I want to answer this in the right way, because I think there's pros and cons to it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's
very diplomatic.
It's important. It's important to be able to customize. Why? Because you, as a retailer, and if we're talking in the retail world, you have specific domain requirements.
Right.
You are an expert in a certain field, and in order to be able to customize a tool set to meet your domain demand, I think absolutely important. The problem, and this is why I always just err a little bit, is there's a certain level of customization I think that you get to where it becomes very hard for you to extract out of that if you ever need to extract out of that. And because sometimes we find organizations or enterprises locked into tool sets because of the high level of customization that's taken place.
Right.
So I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think it's just something that organizations need to be very, very aware of. But it is certainly important to be able to customize and get to a certain level of customization to meet your enterprise specific requirements.
So it sounds almost like you're saying that it's necessary to customize to meet the needs of the business process, but by doing it too much, you end up building a brittle system that can't adapt to changes in the business process.
Yeah, you 100% hit the nail on the head. There's of course, there's many other benefits, scalability.
Right.
As organizations grow, and we see that, they need to be able to customize on the back end, and if you've got that ability to, great. I mean, that's fantastic. You're bringing on other systems. Invariably, your business is going to go through change in the future. You need to be able to interoperate with those systems coming on board. So interoperability is, of course, very key. So, from a customization perspective, 100%, we're talking about change. We're talking about constant change, specifically in the IT operations world. So those are all levels of customization that are required. So, yeah, but be careful.
Be careful, because you get sort of, it sounds like, compounding benefits when you can interoperate, but you got to be very careful not to build a system that you can't adapt, update, change, replace when needed.
Yeah. I mean, it's a silly example, but you go to clients that are still running some very key applications on the mainframe,
Right.
and that's, to me, potentially a great example. You've got an application that's 30 years old that you just are still so dependent on, but because it's been so customized and it's now so proprietary, you can't lift and shift that off its current stack. You almost have to redevelop and start from scratch.
Right.
Yeah, which could be a tremendous risk, if you're in a, say, heavily regulated industry like banking.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and it's a big lift and shift. And I think if we jump to the financial sector, that's a big challenge that some of the banks have here. Is they are still very dependent on the mainframe.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I just think it's a legacy thing again that it's very difficult to manage and very costly.
Yeah.
And very costly.
Well, I think if you look across industries here, you'll see the same thing, right? Banks, government agencies who adopted computerization early, right? They have these legacy tools built in languages that are, long since out of the mainstream,
Out of date, yeah.
But collecting tax revenue is important, and
of course, yeah.
Investigation of crimes is important, and so they've got to be very careful with how they make those changes.
Exactly. So, are there any? How are customizations shared across different groups in general?
So, yeah, we touched on this last time we had a brief chat. In terms of collaboration in markets, and I think what I'm certainly observing, is that there is definitely more content being shared by the relevant organizations in the marketplace. I think there's been a couple of things that have happened, and in order to gain shareholder confidence and customer confidence and customer loyalty, organizations are almost feeling compelled to share strategies, to share roadmaps, to be a little bit more forthcoming, to share with their shareholder base and with their client base and with the marketplace where they're going.
Right.
So to answer your question, just looking at what's happening, in the online space, you'll see a lot of the retailers starting to publish what their digital strategy is, what their growth strategy is. And that's all underpinned by very specific growth areas and very specific strategies, whether it online, whether it be a focus on, instant delivery, as I mentioned, earlier, as a benefit to shopping. There might be a requirement or a growth to increase store footprint, based on demand in certain areas,
right.
From a geographical or demographical perspective. Those are all starting to be shared more commonly now, and is obviously a lot more available. And you'll even see, if you go through some of the financial reports, the annual financial reports, there's a lot of strategy information that's starting to be disclosed and become public information in those reports as well. So I think what we're seeing is everyone is striving towards enhancing the customer experience.
Yeah.
Those are common themes. We're seeing a lot of sharing on industry standards, specifically in the retail and the financial space as well as best practice. There's a certain code and a certain ethics that that need to remain consistent in the marketplace. Sure. And I'll refer back to my previous point, just touching on fraud. I think data sharing is becoming more and more prevalent as well. And to make all of that available through the AIOps platform, I think is what we are seeing right now at the moment, although in its early phase. I'll give you an example. Are you aware of Discovery Holdings?
The company, no.
Okay. So
Unless if you're talking about Discovery, like the credit card, Discover, I'm not familiar. No.
So Discovery here in SA has got a loyalty program. It's called Vitality, and that is a concept that was brought around. Is we will reward you as the client for being healthy, for living a healthy and active lifestyle.
Sure.
And the program was so successful that they started onboarding the retailers, the financial services, coffee shops. You go to gym 3 times out of a week, you get rewarded a coffee.
Nice.
You hit your training goals for a month. You can go and buy an iPhone. You pay for the iPhone. Don't get me wrong, but based on your exercise and you meeting other certain criteria, they pay that iPhone for you as long as you reach your monthly goals. And so they're starting to bring the whole ecosystem together through a loyalty program, and it's really taken off. In fact, it's being rolled out globally, and is extremely, as I said, extremely successful. But I think that's just a classic example of all that information that's being shared, because in order for you to hit those goals, you've got to be able to share the relevant information to my profile across the retail space. I can go buy tires for my car, I get discounts. I can get special rates on my car insurance and household insurance. And that's all based on my specific financial profile, my health profile, and what products I consume from a specific company. And that's a very cool example of how data is actually shared across many, many different entities and many different enterprises. So that, I think, is we're definitely going to see more of that in the future.
That's
for sure.
That's very interesting. It sounds like some of the competitors honestly need to collaborate in that sort of situation. I can think of a couple of sort of consortiums in the United States like that. The banks got together for a money transfer system. There's a similar loyalty program that's not nearly as successful. I mean, it's interesting when competitors collaborate, right? Because there are legal and illegal, ethical and unethical ways to do that. So what are your thoughts on that? When is it okay for competitors to collaborate? How do they do it successfully?
So look, we're obviously governed by some acts. There's certain information that you just cannot share. The POPI Act, private information cannot be shared. If it is shared, it's only by consent. So it's a very clear line that you cannot cross. But I think based on, sometimes, quite often what we see now is if you apply for a new service or a new offering, you always have the option now, yes, please share my information or don't share my information.
Right.
But I think that's one side of it. But I think the other side of it is from a trending perspective, why not? If we see trends in the marketplace, sure. If there's pricing that's published out in the marketplace, sure. I mean, I think different cases will be applied to different scenarios when it comes to what's above the line and what's below the line, in terms of
sharing
of ethical behavior. So it is monitored. It is strongly watched and monitored. But it is something that we always need to keep in the back of our minds.
Yeah.
Data is protected and always needs to be protected, especially when it becomes, when it's personal data.
Yeah. But the strategies can be shared, and it's beautiful to see that there's initiatives that are anchoring on our better livelihoods, right? So for the example that you gave of rewarding people for exercise and things of that nature. I mean, imagine all of us putting our minds together in what we could do in places, even in South Africa, right? Imagine we're promoting people to go to the gym, and it's just a random thought in my head, but some of these treadmills these days, they're kind of curve shaped and they can produce electricity when you run on them, and based on kinetic energy, you can actually produce energy through these things. Imagine you have a gym that could produce energy and you're encouraging people to exercise. So they're creating sustainable green energy, right? But then they're also helping the livelihood. Together, we can accomplish these things. But if we keep our strategies to ourselves, if we're not thinking holistically, then that's going to inhibit us from actually achieving those goals.
No, you're absolutely right. Spot on. You know, it's to take it a step further in terms of the program that I was talking about. It's just another aspect of it. If you go and buy certain products within a certain shop, you get rewarded for buying healthy produce. Like, you know, if you buy a white bread as opposed to a whole wheat loaf of bread, you'll get points for buying a whole wheat loaf of bread, not the white bread.
Right.
So you kind of, you know,
nudges you in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, you want to get those points because you want to get your iPhone paid. So you're going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious how credit cards might start to adopt these things. It seems like their rewards and point systems might actually be conducive to kind of creating these initiatives.
And that's what we're seeing as well is, you know, the more you swipe, the more loyalty points you get. And the more loyalty points you get equates back into a monetary conversion. Right. So there is an incentive to use your card, but their incentive then relates or gets translated into a virtual coin, which at the end of the day you bank enough of, and you know there's your Christmas present at the end of the year that you saved up for just by using your card.
Right.
Again, that kind of information gets shared with other retailers because you can then use those points to go to your favorite online retail shop and go and buy your coffee machine that you wanted, or go and buy, you know, whatever you need for the house based on those points as well. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the collaboration taking place from a data perspective.
And it does feel with the reduced difficulty of communication between people and parties around the world, you know, with internet technologies, you do see that kind of collaboration happening more and more on a broader scale, right? Where ideas from one country make it to another country. You know, there's people who publish interesting facts about where they live and they kind of catch on. It's like, well, hey, how come we're not doing that here? I think about the tremendous impact of free and open source software in the world, right? You know, the different, you know, SSL libraries, the Linux kernel, the GNU utility chains, right? Like, all these things, and more of the infrastructure runs on these things that are common infrastructure, and they're, you know, oftentimes funded by large companies that are using them, but they're all funding a portion of it. It meets everybody's needs, and so it kind of really everyone benefits from these things that are sort of common infrastructure, and then the companies compete on their individual areas of value.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've positioned it so well. It's becoming a bigger global community. And collaboration is certainly very key to that global community expanding. But I think, again, just to go back to the data element, it's just something that's becoming very guarded in terms of the certain acts and the security and compliance overlays that you need to have in place as well. And that's where the risk is, of course. I mean, we hear about data breaches, you know, almost every day. So I just think we need to keep focus on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Clinton, it's been great talking with you. If people want to get to know more about you, where can they find out?
Where can they find out? LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, so that's one avenue. Email address.
Yeah, if you want to share your email address.
I can be reached on clinton.white, so that's CLINTON.WHITE at AppCentrix.co.za. So that's AppCentrix.co.za.
Fantastic.
Well, awesome. Thanks for joining us today.
James.
Thank you, Clinton. It's been a pleasure. And take care, folks. Thanks for listening.
Have an awesome time. All the best.
All right.
You too.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you did, please hit the subscribe button. We're hosted on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and many other podcast platforms. If you'd like to find out more, you can do so at sciencelogic.com/podcast.